Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Yevamot. We are up to Perek Yud Aleph Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilun Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbai V'Eliyahu ben Burcha Yisraelov ben Chana bad Miriam, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Le'avdi ben Chaim Le'chaim V'Le'refuah Shelema Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, and Mariana Miriam Chaya bat Tamara betoch Shah Cholei Yisrael. The Mishnah discusses the laws of a Kohen and his slave who were mixed up as children. The Mishnah begins, Kohenet shenitarav ladah bivlat shivchatah. If the child of a Kohen's wife became mixed up with a child of her slave woman so that it is not known which boy is the Kohen and which is his slave, the law is that each one must be treated as a possible Kohen as well as a possible slave. Therefore, the following laws apply to them. They may both eat terumah, since both a Kohen and the slave of a Kohen are entitled to eat terumah, and this is stated explicitly in the Torah in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 22, verse 11, and we spoke about it in the Mishnayot earlier, chapter 7, Mishnayot 1 and 2. But they receive one portion of terumah at the threshing floor where terumah is given out, meaning they receive terumah only when they come together, since we do not give terumah directly to a Kohen slave in a public setting unless his master comes along with him. The rabbis decreed that a Kohen slave may receive terumah only in the presence of his master, so that people not mistake the slave for a Kohen and permit him to marry a Jewish woman. When people see his master with him, they will realize he is a slave. Therefore, in our case, where one of the children is a slave and the other is his master, both of them must be present to receive a portion of terumah at the threshing floor. The joint presence of these children will remind people that one of them is a slave, even though no one knows which is the slave and which is the Kohen. Venan mitamin lemetim, they both may not become tameh through contact with the dead, since one of them is a Kohen who is forbidden to become tameh through a dead person. Since this is biblically forbidden for a Kohen in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 21, verse 1, and earlier in the Mishnayot, chapter 10, Mishnah 1, it is forbidden for a questionable Kohen as well, because there is a rule that one must avoid even the possibility of a biblical violation, what we call Safek Doraita Lechumrah. Then Nosin Nashim, and they both may not get married to any women, Ben Biksherot, Ben Pisulot, either to women who are fit, permitted to marry a regular Jew, who are forbidden to marry a slave, or to women who are unfit to marry a regular Jew, or forbidden to marry a Kohen. The state of doubt prevents either one of them from marrying, because there is no woman who is permitted to both a Jew and a slave. An ordinary Jewish woman is forbidden to a slave, and a non-Jewish slave woman who may marry a slave is forbidden to a Kohen. The Mishnah continues with the same case and explains how their laws are affected when the slave is freed. Higdilu atarovot, if the mixed up children grew to adulthood, and they freed each other, and the father of the mixed up Kohen died, so that one of these children inherited his father and now owns the other one. When these boys became adults, 13 years old, when they have the legal power to free their slaves, they gave each other a bill of freedom so as to remove the question about their status. So regardless of which one was the master and which the slave, both are now free men. And the Gemara on page 100a in Masechet Yevamot explains that they're actually obligated to free each other when they come of age so that they can both marry. A slave who is freed by his Jewish master has the status of a convert who is considered a Yisrael and is permitted to marry any Jewish woman, as the Rambam writes in Ilchot Isurei Biyah, chapter 12, Halakha 17. So again, Higdilu atarovot, if the mixed up children grew to adulthood, and they freed each other so that now the slave, whichever one he is, has the status of Israel. The law is that each one must be treated as a possible Kohen as well as a possible Israel. Therefore, the following laws now apply to them. Nosin Nashim reiyot lekiuna. They both may marry women, but only those who are fit for kiuna that a Kohen may marry, because each one is possibly a Kohen. Venan mitamin ametim, and they still may not become tameh through contact with the dead for the same reason. V'im nitmu enan sofgin et arbaim. However, if they did become tameh, even deliberately, they do not receive the penalty of 40 lashes, since each one of them can claim that he is not a Kohen, and we cannot punish a person for a questionable violation. Normally, a Kohen who willfully becomes tameh to a dead person receives the punishment of malkut lashes, as the Rambam writes in Rechot Avel, chapter 3, Halakha 1. Now, the Mishnah refers to malkut as 40 lashes because that is the expression used in the Torah. However, the Mishnah in Makot chapter 3, Mishnah 10 says that the actual number of lashes given is 39. Now, before they freed each other, they were both allowed to eat terumah, since even the slave of a Kohen may eat terumah. Once they freed each other, this is no longer the case. The Mishnah now details their new status regarding Tirumah. Ve'enan ochlim betruma, they may not eat Tirumah because one of them is now a freed slave who is forbidden to eat Tirumah. Ve'im achlu enan mishalmin keren v'chomesh, but if they did eat Tirumah, they do not have to pay the principal, the value of the eaten Tirumah, plus an additional fifth to a Kohen, since each one can claim that he is the Kohen and not required to pay. A non-Kohen who eats Tirumah by mistake must give a Kohen of his choice an amount of produce equal to that which he ate, plus a penalty of a fifth. In our case, each of the men is exempt from this payment if he ate Tirumah because each can claim that he is in fact the Kohen. Since it cannot be proven that the Tirumah was not rightfully his, he does not have to pay in accordance with the rule, Hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. The burden of proof rests on the one who wishes to take payment from his fellow. Ve'enan cholkin al hagoren, they do not receive a portion of Tirumah at the threshing floor, since they are forbidden to eat it, as the Mishnah said earlier, even if both of them come at the same time and request a single portion, arguing that one of them is definitely a Kohen, they do not receive the Tirumah, because this may lead them to eat it, which is forbidden, since one of them is a non-Kohen. But they may sell to a Kohen the Tirumah that they separate from their own produce, and the money from the sale belongs to them. They do not have to give the money to a Kohen. A Kohen too must separate Tirumah from his produce before he can eat the rest, though he may keep the Tirumah for himself, as the Rambam writes in Echod Maasel, chapter 1, Halakha 3. So clearly, therefore, the questionable Kohanim of our Mishnah must each separate Tirumah from their own produce. However, they are not required to give this Tirumah to a definite Kohen, because each one can argue to the Kohen, prove that I am not a Kohen, and you may then take the Tirumah. Since no Kohen could ever bring such a proof, the Tirumah remains in their possession. While they cannot actually eat the Tirumah, as the Mishnah taught us, they can benefit from it by selling it to a definite Kohen and keeping the money. Now, certain parts of the sacrificial offerings are given to the Kohanim. The Mishnah gives the law for these parts in regard to the mixed up children once they freed each other. They do not receive a portion of the sacrifices of the temple, such as the hides of the offerings that are given out to the Kohanim who serve in the temple, since neither of them can prove he is a Kohen and entitled to them. Certainly, they are not given a portion of meat from the temple offerings that are reserved for Kohanim. For just as they may not eat Tirumah, as we have learned, they may not eat from the meat of these consecrated offerings. The Mishnah teaches that even the hides of the offerings, which are given out to the group of Kohanim serving that week in the temple, are not given to these questionable Kohanim. Then nodim lehem kodashim, we do not give them sacrifices to offer in the temple, because one of them is an Kohen who is forbidden to perform the sacrificial service. Then motzim shalem miadam, but we do not remove their own sacrifices, the Bechor offerings, from their possession to give them to a Kohen, since each one can claim that he is a Kohen. The firstborn male of sheep, goats, or cattle born in one's flock, known as a bechor, must be given to a Kohen. In our case, we do not force each of these people to do so, because each can claim that he is the Kohen, in which case the bechor is his to keep. The Mishnah will explain soon what is done with the bechor in this situation. They are also exempt from the obligation to give the foreleg, the jaws, and the stomach of kosher animals to a Kohen, since each one can claim that he is the Kohen. A Yisrael, just as a background, a Yisrael who slaughters a sheep, goat, or ox for non-sacrificial purposes must give the animal's right foreleg, its jaws, and its stomach as a gift to a Kohen, as the Torah says in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 18, verse 3. And more specifically, keva is the fourth division of the stomach in which digestion takes place. The questionable Kohanim of our Mishnah do not need to give these gifts, because each one can argue that he is the Kohen and is therefore exempt from the requirement. Now, in contrast to Tirumah, which is forbidden to a non-Kohen, the foreleg, jaws, the stomach of an animal may be eaten by anyone. The only obligation is to give them to a Kohen, as the Rambam writes in Echod Bikurim, chapter 9, Halakha 14. Since in our case they are exempt from giving them to a Kohen, they may eat them themselves. And the bechor animal of each should be left to graze until it develops a blemish that disqualifies it from being brought as an offering, and then it may be slaughtered and eaten by the owner. In temple times, a person who had an animal, bechor, would give it to a Kohen, and the Kohen would bring it as an offering and eat its meat. If a bechor was born into a flock owned by a Kohen, the Kohen would offer it himself and eat the meat. The case of a questionable Kohen's bechor, however, is problematic. Since he is possibly a Kohen himself, we cannot force him to give it to a definite Kohen, as the Mishnah taught us, and he cannot give it to a definite Kohen to offer it for him on condition that its meat be returned to him after the sacrificial service has been completed, since he may be a non-Kohen, and a non-Kohen is forbidden to eat the meat of an unblemished bechor. So to solve this problem, the Mishnah teaches that the owner should leave the animal to graze until it develops a disqualifying blemish. When this happens to a bechor, it may be slaughtered in the normal manner, and its meat may be eaten by anyone, even non-Kohanim, since a blemished bechor has no sanctity. Even though the law is that a blemished Bechor too must be given to a Kohen, that's simply a monetary obligation. In our case, therefore, where the animal might himself, in our case, therefore, where the owner might himself be a Kohen, there is no requirement to give it to a definite Kohen. And the animal must be left to graze until it develops a blemish on its own. It is biblically forbidden to intentionally inflict a blemish on a Bechor, as the Mishnah discussed in Masechet Bechor, chapter 5, Mishnah 2 and 3. V'notnin alav chumrei chohanim v'chumrei Yisraelim. To sum up the laws of the Mishnah, we place upon each of these mixed up sons both the stringencies of Kohanim and the stringencies of Yisraelim. The Gemara on page 100a explains that this phrase of the Mishnah includes yet another law concerning a mincha, flour offering, that one of them brings to the temple. The mincha offering of a non-Kohen is a small portion of kometz removed from it to be offered on the altar, and the remainder is eaten by Kohanim. The mincha offering of a Kohen, however, is not eaten at all, must be burnt entirely on the altar. In our case, since it's not known which of them is a Kohen, their mincha offerings must have a portion moved from them, the stringency of Yisraelim, and the remainder may not be eaten but must be burnt, the stringency of Kohanim. And that is then of Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Vav now discusses another case where it is unclear which of two men is the father of a child, and explains how that affects the laws of Yibum and Chalitza. If a woman did not wait 3 months after being divorced or widowed from her husband, and she married someone else right away and then gave birth to a boy 7 months after her second marriage. So the Mishnah taught earlier in chapter 4, Mishnah 10, that a woman who is divorced or widowed from her husband must wait 3 months before remarrying. This waiting period is necessary so that we can distinguish between the child of the first husband and the child of the second husband, as the Gemara explained earlier on page 42a in Masechet Yevamot. After 3 months, the signs of pregnancy are usually noticeable. So if she is noticeably pregnant, by then we know the first husband is the father. Otherwise, the second husband is the father. Our Mishnah discusses a case where a woman did not wait the 3 month period required by the rabbis, and 7 months into her second marriage, she gave birth to a son. Then Yadua im ben Tisha Larishoni ben Shiva Lachron, so that now it is not known who the father is, meaning whether the boy was carried 9 months by his mother and is the child of the first husband, or if he was carried 7 months and is the child of the later husband. Now, besides this child, she also had other sons from the first husband and other sons from the second husband. If he is a son of the first husband, then he and the other sons of that man share the same father and mother, while the sons of the second husband are his brothers only through the mother. If he is a son of the second husband, the opposite is true. The Ars Kalusated in the note brings a diagram to be able to visualize the case. The child whose father is unknown grew up, married, and died without children, so that his widow requires Yibum or Chalitza from one of the brothers on his father's side. However, we do not know which ones are his brothers to his father, who must perform Yibum or Chalitza, and which ones are his brothers only through his mother, who are forbidden to marry the widows, and she is an ervat to them, like we saw in chapter 1, Mishnah 1. The law is that chotzin v'lo miyabmin, one of the sons of each husband should perform chalitza with her, but they may not take her in ibum, because we do not know to which of them she is an erva. Since one of them is definitely a yavam, she needs chalitza to be free to remarry. V'chen ulahem, and similarly he to them, meaning if the known sons of one of the husbands married and died childless, the son whose father is unknown follows these same guidelines. Choletz v'lo miyabem, he performs chalitza with their widows, but he may not take the widow's nibum, because any one of them might be forbidden to him as an erva, the wife of his half-brother to his mother. They all require chalitza from him, since he might be their yavam, and the Mishnah is speaking of a case where there is no definite brother alive, so that he is the only possible yavam. The Mishnah continues with a variation of this previous case. Hayulo achim min harishon v'achim min hasheni shelo me'ota ha'em. If the son whose father is unknown had brothers from the first husband and brothers from the second husband who are not from that mother, both husbands have other sons by a different wife, so we do not know which set of sons are his brothers and which set are unrelated to him. Since these other sons are not through his mother, the only way they can perform yibum with their widow, since these other sons are not through his mother, the only way that they can be related to him is through his father. So if he is the son of their father, he can perform even with their widows. If he is not the son of their father, they're completely unrelated to him, and their widows are not an erva to him. So in this case, the woman whom we had been discussing until now had no sons from either husband except from the one whose father is unknown. Even though one set of sons is not related to him, the Mishnah calls both sets of sons brothers, because we do not know which ones are truly his brothers and which ones are not. So again, the Mishnah says, "Hayu lo achim min harishon v'achim min hasheni shelo me'ota ha'em." If the son whose father is unknown had brothers from the first husband and brothers from the second husband who were not from that mother, meaning both husbands have other sons by different wives, so we do not know which set of sons are his brothers and which set are unrelated to him, and these sons married and died childless, hu choretzu mi'abem, the son whose father is unknown may perform either chalitza or yibum with any of the widows, since they are all permitted to him. If he is their husband's brother, then he is performing yibum with them. If he is not the brother of their husband and there are no other brothers, then they do not have a yavam at all, and they are free to marry anyone, including him. Either way, he may marry them. They all require at least chalitza because of the possibility that he is their husband's brother. Now, this case is true only in a case where the widow's husband had no brothers other than this doubtful one. If there was an additional brother, the widow would certainly have a yibum ban with him, but only possibly to the doubtful brother, so she would be forbidden to marry the doubtful brother, since if he married her, he might be marrying someone else's yevamot. But if he married and died childless, the law for them, the sons of the first and second husband, is as follows. One of them, the sons of one of the husbands, perform chalitza with the widow, and the other one, the son of the other husband, may take her in ibum. Since we do not know who is truly the dead man's brother, the son of the first husband or son of the second husband, his widow has a possible yibum to each of them. Therefore, neither one can perform yibum to begin with, because he might be marrying someone else's yivama. However, once she receives chalitza from one of them, she is definitely permitted to perform yibum with the other one, since she is either his yivama or yivama who has already been released by chalitza, who is now permitted to marry anyone. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.